Hello, everybody. I'm Christina, and today we are going to do a scenario because there are people that have talked about this a bit, but I just think it's important to kind of get, I guess, a more real look at what the future might bring, especially according to prophecy. Okay. Hello, sunshine. It's good to see you, girl. So good to see you. Um, I want to warn that this is not for children. It's not for the faint of heart, but this is still just a scenario. I want to start out by saying I want to give a shout out for Granny B. She just had surgery, and I pray that she has a speedy recovery. Ask for prayers for her. I want to thank Tammy for this suggestion on this video, and to ask everyone to like, subscribe, share the videos. It helps a lot, and definitely comment. That's my favorite of all. Okay, so I've written this thing. Hello, Watchman, and hello, Patricia. Good to see you guys. That's awesome. It's wonderful that everybody is coming on. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start reading this, okay? I did write it myself, but you can tell me what you think, okay? It's a beautiful day. The air is crisp, and there is a cloudless, sunny morning sky over America. It's the weekday. Everyone is at work and school, doing what they always do. By all accounts, so far, this is an ordinary day. But suddenly, there is a marked change. This first hour would prove to be the most crucial to anyone who might survive. The phone stopped working. In fact, all electronics became non operational. Lights in buildings went out. The cars stopped on the roads. Our military was compromised in large part due to equipment failure and communication system hacking. There are many at this point across the nation that are confused and don't know what is happening. In some cities, a siren has begun to sound. In these cities, chaos has ensued. People are getting trampled. They're pulling at each other in vain attempts to get past, but the sirens only gave a couple of minutes of warning. There are no public bunkers available for Americans. There had been cities that had been named by prophets of recent times that included Detroit, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, New York City, two cities in California, and many along the East Coast. Still, there were more cities that were targeted. There was no time for them. All anyone could do if they thought to was to get down behind a thick wall or lockers with their head between their knees to brace for impact. What began as an ordinary morning turned into final moments of life for millions of people. And in those final moments, there were those trying to save their lives and did not pray. It never occurred to them to pray, only to survive. Still others understood and prepared to meet God with seconds to spare. One by one, these predetermined cities were leveled in bright flashes of blinding light with a wide radius from the impact site. Everyone in them was gone, but the day had only just begun. The outskirts of these cities suffered the worst fate. The fallout and radiation poisoning ensured a slower, more painful death. Many had seen the flash of light and were blinded. There was no warning, no public bunkers, no way to call for help, and no way to warn anyone else. They were burned, but many had survived for now. If they were smart and could travel, they would note the direction of the wind and go the other way. Woe to those in the direction of that wind. Before another moment could pass, cargo planes began to inundate our coast with parachuting troops while dumping equipment and tanks in certain regions. In the countrysides of what was becoming the former United States, rumors were starting to spread. They weren't sure what was happening just yet. There was more of a general anxiety that loved ones couldn't be reached. Christians who had listened to the prophetic warnings knew exactly what was going on. They quickly enacted their bug out plans. God had already led others ahead of time to places of safety. Church leaders began prayer groups. Still, there were other darker characters perceiving well what was happening and would soon become marauders with no moral foundation. They also quietly slipped away and began to band together. Others mocked the overreaction of the people. It wasn't an overreaction, though. Just some people can't help but mock others whenever something serious arises. They would come to regret it, this time especially, as the truth became self evident. I'm going to stop and check the chat for just a second, see how everyone's doing. Okay. One prophetic exactly also sees on 12. Okay. What is the content? Did you see this? Did I see a premonition? Part of it, yeah. Part of it is, but a lot of it is common sense too, concerning what we're really facing out there with the hacking that's been going on. That this could actually be a very real scenario, not just my vision and other people's visions, but this would probably closely be what something like an invasion on our soil would be like. Okay, but there's more. Okay, there's more. In some cases, they'd find out when the burn victims would enter their town. In other cases, they'd find out by ham radio from surrounding towns. Others would soon find themselves in battle. There was no American fleet or of American soldiers with cargo planes to whisk you away to bunkers for civilians. That was only in the movies. We were on our own. In fact, the entire military was struggling at that moment. There were bases that still had no idea what was happening and would be overtaken suddenly, sadly. In many cases, the invading forces traveled major highways toward the center of this once great nation. Barricades would have to be erected along well-known routes such as Interstate I-10 if they could act in time and in unison. But the invasion persisted with little resistance. Black helicopters swarmed towns and shot everyone in sight as they landed. Once on the ground, unspeakable things began to happen. The people were in shock. They just couldn't understand what was happening, even when doors and windows were blocked, while buildings were set on fire. They couldn't perceive it, even as they saw people being gunned down. Others were running in panic, but few fired back. There were so many soldiers coming out of the sky. Black kamikaze helicopters slammed into buildings. Much of the day was spent like this in town after town. Meanwhile, the remote towns were still unaware of what was going on. With the fall in full play, it was darker earlier, so families sat down by candlelight to whatever dinner they could provide under the circumstances. They would never get a chance to take a bite when they sat down. The plates were found later uneaten in empty homes. Caravans of soldiers and extended black Humvees had taken to the streets to round up the people. They were told many lies to gain compliance. They were told not to worry. They had 15 minutes to gather one bag for each person that people thought they would need in their new home. They were told that they would receive special treatment from these armed foreign soldiers. They were told whatever they needed to hear so that they would willingly get into these vehicles for transport. Hold on just a second, you guys. All right. If you want to go in, go in. He wants to stay anonymous. Welcome home. It's my son coming home from work. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We can continue. Looks like everything's okay. All right. Okay, they were told whatever they needed to hear so that they would willingly get into these vehicles for transport. These same people were never seen again. Some fought, some ran. They were the smart ones. Going with them was the worst thing you could do. There was a take no prisoners order that would be brutally carried out. They didn't need us to have time to gather our wits and rebel in numbers we currently had. They were very efficient in that endeavor, but there were survivors. And we began to gather ourselves and our senses. We began to resist, but it took months of fighting that seemed to never end. Nuclear winter fell upon us that year, making survival that much harder. Every skill that everyone possessed was of the utmost importance now. Veterans, doctors, engineers, electricians, mechanics, cooks, nurses, geologists, trappers, hunters, prophets, and pastors, you name it, was vital now. Caves, mountains, forests, and abandoned facilities such as subways house survivors and resistors. Tripwires, scouts, EMPs for drones, and even dogs were employed to protect perimeters. The days of our proud America were gone forever, leaving only a crushed, humbled remnant. Finally, the invaders left, but we were never the same. Babylon had fallen, the troops were gone, but something more was to come. Marauders. There were Christian communities to plunder, and they did. Those evil-hearted souls had to be stopped, and they were, but by a tired and ragged remainder. The troops that had finally left headed for Israel, and before the eyes of the world, the hand of God performed a mighty work and stopped them. All right. So what happens with Israel after what everybody believes, as far as an invasion goes, this is how I believe things are going to go according to the visions that I've had. That Israel comes next, and that it would be kind of nice to go ahead and have some tips. Because not everybody's going to be in the impact zone. Not everybody's going to be wiped out. The outlying areas are going to be in danger too from fallout, depending on how close you are, right? And if you're downwind. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is hide and pray if it's on its way. You do not want to hide in your car. Do not try to get out by your car if it still works. If you're in densely populated areas, the traffic will be gridlocked and you'll be trapped. Try hiding in subways, basements, centers of buildings, bank vaults. You have to know the difference between an air burst and a ground burst. There is a difference. They say the air bursts are way worse because the devastation goes further. Due to the fact that there are less buildings to block the burst and the radiation rains down on you. People that are at least a mile away from the impact zone, they're going to instantly suffer major burns. Clothes could melt into your skin. You will see it before you feel or hear it. Try to close your eyes. Don't look at it because it will blind you. Stay away from windows. Duck and cover. If you're in a college, school situation, locker room, maybe play football or something, do like they taught us when we were kids. You get on your knees, head against the locker, and your head with your hands, and you brace for impact. That's called duck and cover. Okay. It was true in the 50s. It's true now. They still use that advice. If possible, cover your face afterwards. That includes your eyes, safety glasses if available, because a lot of people don't have those masks, right? You want to try to stay put at first if you're close to the impact zone and you've survived, because the half-life of these particles, it takes a day or two for them to the most dangerous of them to dissolve away. And then you might be able to travel, but you would have to do it quickly. Iodine pills help with radiation poisoning. Cilantro can remove heavy metals from water, so you can grow lots of it. Growing will probably be so important. Water runs downhill, so you'll have to think about your rivers and where they flow to. And if you have those seeds that are down river from some of these cities, plant the cilantro. It'll help with the heavy metals in the water. Prayer can get you through days without water and food. Prayer and God's protection on you will provide places of safety. 10,000 can fall to your left and to your right, but no harm might come nigh thee. Your relationship with God will be the most important thing, okay? Don't be without a manual can opener and a knife, okay? Because you kind of need those survival tools. Towns will be receiving burn victims. You never know which towns those are, but if you're on the outskirts of these cities, you might want to grow a lot of aloe vera to treat these burns. And if you have had fallout particles on you, discard your clothing and wash your hair with your head upside down to keep the water from getting into your eyes. You don't want it to get into your eyes, okay? A knife is a man. I saw a guy, Billy, use a spoon to open a can. Today's nuclear weapons, you're looking at a 10-mile instant incineration, a 20-mile death by fire, okay, and 100-mile by radioactive gas. So if you're outside of that certain zone, depending on the weapon that's being used, you'll suffer more fallout versus the impact zone, whatever the radius is. I was going off of, I guess, older military weapons thing. Yeah, and Patricia, people can acquire firearms, but isn't it amazing the timing of them talking about reforming gun laws and getting your weapons back? I'm not so, I mean, I understand the whole problem with the civil unrest and the mass shootings. I mean, it seemed like just yesterday there were like 10 or 12 reports of shootings just in Houston, just yesterday. Little girl somewhere got killed by a drive-by in a McDonald's parking lot somewhere yesterday. Story after story after story. But see, the big enemy, that's the one that's coming one day. That's prophecy. That's the visions people have had. That's something that when God's leading his children, we know things are coming before they do. And I do believe that he's moved certain people to certain locations that'll be safe places, safe communities. All right. Okay. Let's see what else we've got in the comments. I hope my crops don't eat it. I know, right? I know. People have talked about carrying tin boxes to put certain equipment in. I tend to keep all the different cords from all of the the cable cords, even the Ethernet cords, the camera cords, because I never know if I'm going to end up needing those for older equipment that might be brought my way. You never know, okay, that we might be using equipment that was pre-smart device. You see what I mean? And those, you might still need those connections. But I don't even know why God told me. He just said, start saving those cords. I was like, okay, that's fine with me. Yet the marauders, you're going to have to be super, super careful, okay, Christians, because they're not just there to plunder your supplies. You got me? Understand this. All right. One touch, one prophetic touch. I bet people do a lot of things while watching videos. They could be listening to them going down the road, right? Okay, now you need to remember lighters, yes. Okay, there's a cilantro and what? Well, so as far as the heavy metal, Patricia, cilantro is the only one that I know, but you might want to do some more research on that. They say like you can dip it in a glass of water and like 10 minutes later, you pull it out and your water should be fine. Again, do the research to get the exact minutes and how they do that. Lighters, that will be a big deal. You're gonna have to have your go bags because chances are you're gonna have to stay mobile. You can't just stay in one spot just for one. Some people have secret rooms built into their houses. Some people had the finances and ahead of time to have their own bunkers. Okay, I am not one of those people. I've had my own vision, and it was funny, right? Because I had mine like 20 years ago. I had several of them actually, and one of them I was running away along a river. And then years later, one by one, without even talking about it, my kids started coming up and telling me, Mom, I had a dream. I was running alone down this river from soldiers. And it's funny because we have a river right in my backyard, basically. We do. It's kind of crazy. It is. But every one of them, every last one of them have said that. And the smart ones should run at first. Smart one, run, and hide. Okay. Oh, be very careful if you have a cough or a baby that might be crying or acting up. Okay. Be very, very careful with that. Also, if you've got people around you that are flipping out because they're in panic mode, you need to get away from them. They're about to give away your location. Just certain things you need to remember so that you are not spotted. You don't want to be wearing bright orange clothing that day or neon green, things like that. You don't want to be wearing. You want to wear darker colors. Be a gray man, stay mundane. They will think it's already looted. I've also been talking to friends about covert gardening because a lot of us out here in the woods, the backwoods, okay, we might have property that is surrounded by trees, and some of it might have a little bit of high grass growing. and in certain spaces, right? I told him, I said, since we live so close to water, line your perimeter with basil. And they'll just think it's weed, but it keeps away the mosquitoes that are from the river. They might not notice that you've got tiny growing out there in the brush and grapevines running up trees. They might not notice that one of those trees or a couple of those trees are actually fruit trees. You see what I'm saying? Make it so that it's hidden in plain sight by people that wouldn't necessarily, potatoes are grown underground. They might not know what those shoots look like. You see what I'm saying? There are ways to prepare because not everybody's going to get nuked. There are going to be places that you might want to learn to recognize the wild mushrooms and nuts that grow in your area and where to find those. Okay. And I think that getting books on your area and those certain things that are around those wild edibles will help you distinguish which one is which, especially with the mushrooms. I love mushrooms. Was the dream in a sandy, sunny, yellowish field? Not mine. Mine wasn't, because I live in the woods. Mine was in the woods with a river running right through it. And Texas has a lot of rivers, but throughout my life, one way or the other, I've always ended up on the San Jacinto, whether I was by the Gulf of Mexico or north end of Houston. It's all San Jacinto for some reason in my life, but got plenty of woods back here, and the San Jacinto is like a rock throw, really, from here. It wouldn't take me any time, but to me, that is what my children and I feel like. They're grown now, but we feel like that's what we're told to do when the time comes, is to run off in those bushes. But that is why we also have our go bags prepared. And there's a back door that's facing those woods too. So all we'd have to do is grab those bags and go. Just go and run our little hearts out. Okay. I have a little SAS manual and bushcraft book. Those are handy to have. Absolutely. That's right. There's also a thing called wild lettuce. If you're injured in some way or if your back is hurting you, it's a lot of people think is a weed, but you can make a black salve out of it that you can put on you to relieve pain. That's like morphine, but it's not addictive. It's completely natural. Those are things but do it for your terrain. I know that's in mine, but definitely look. You wouldn't be surprised. Like that rose petals, if you like boil some water, and when you turn off the water, you put those rose petals in there and just kind of let it steep like a tea for a minute. You drink that, it'll bring down a high fever. Knowing things like that can really, really help you out. Like if you have a toothache and infection, putting raw salt around it will help draw out that infection and that pain. Agricultural theft is big here. We had a natural lava disaster here, and whole evacuated homes were looted. See, yes, they would be. A lot of looting would naturally go on. So I think that's why it's good to leave those areas if you're in one of those metro areas or just really well populated areas. Doesn't necessarily have to be the cities. Have a route for yourself that's not just something everybody knows. It's just something you and your family have, and a meeting place. Okay, because if communication's down, at least if you all know where to meet, you've got a really good start. Okay. Agricultural. Okay, Christy. I was leaving the bridge, was reddish brown. There was trees on the side of the road when I finally got off that bridge. Okay, so that was for Christy. My dream, Patricia says, my dream sort of like Florida, Texas, but running from American. See that in one of my visions, that's what I saw too. They looked American, but their uniforms looked like the Russian uniforms now. And you could tell there was just something, you could tell they were not American soldiers. It was something distinct enough. You could tell it wasn't quite right. And then, of course, they spoke. But say the whole Ukraine thing, whole Taiwan thing is just a warm-up exercise. And then they come for us, and they come for Israel. That could happen. Why not? And whenever it does, however it happens, it's there's no one answer for everybody because everybody lives somewhere different. Like New Mexico has Carlsbad Caverns. If I lived out there, that's probably where I would go. You know, we can certainly heed these dreams and work on avoiding it. Everybody, I really do believe, is getting, even at the time, will continue to get their instruction from the Lord. Hold on, go now, run this direction. There will be something. God will have his hands on us. And again, like I said, a lot of us have had dreams. I think it's kind of specific instructions for us individually in a lot of cases already. People have had a lot of dreams about Florida, New York, California. Okay. Even a friend of mine, Jim, he said that from what he had heard through intelligence, this is unverified, that he thought Texas was going to suffer heavy fallout. And yet God moved me where I am. Specifically, in my case, he was more worried about being on the coastline. And I think that for a situation like this, that it would be important to realize they're going to hit your coastlines first. So that's even another reason to get off the coastline, get out of the cities ahead of time. God's been leading a lot of people out already, out of these cities and off of these coastlines. So if you have the ability to move, it can't hurt. Okay, a lot of people have been buying up that property, that country property. A lot of people survived in the early colonial days in the New Orleans swamp. So, I wouldn't recommend being on the coast in the swamps of Louisiana right now. But I'm just saying that you can make the most of your terrain. I've never been to a city bigger than Little Rock, so I don't know where it was. Okay, yeah, the city I saw get nuked, I didn't know where it was either. But one thing that it was distinct in my vision of this city I saw, I was aware other cities were getting hit too, but in mine, there was a fence around this city, like a prison-like fence with a razor wire. So you can see I've been like looking at DC sideways for the last few months. You know what I mean? I'm like, that looks really close to what I saw. And there were troops outside of these fences guarding what was inside. But in my dream, my vision, it also trapped them inside. They couldn't necessarily get out. It was crazy. There's a man, Mark Murchison, who's had visions of New York. We prophesy in parts. God said he would pour out his I know this verse. It's like, his sons and daughters would prophesy, pour out his spirit. Sons and daughters would prophesy. And we do. It's been happening. It's happening. That prophecy has definitely been being fulfilled. The spirit, yes. So you see that going to church on Sunday in this case it's not what's going to get you there. You really have to have a relationship with God. You have to. Because whatever is happening in front of us, whatever is happening, we've got to just keep locked on. Just hold on to him and listen. Listen very, very carefully. People say we've only got 5 senses. No, we don't. We have a 6th sense too. Okay, it's our connection with God. And as long as we haven't forsaken him, he comes, we have a relationship. And people say, well, you can't talk to God. Well, I say the Bible says that God's children hear him. That's what the Bible says, that his children can hear him. Okay, so don't let anybody say, oh, you can't hear God. Yes, you can. All right. And God is true to his word. And so when you see the hard prophecies coming true, even the hard ones, you know that everything he said is true. But God is never without a plan. He's never without an ability to redeem us as a people. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, it's when you're on your knees that you usually end up praying. It's a good place to pray. All right. Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's kind of just look a little bit through there because I think that we kind of covered everything. I hope that this was just something to kind of get your mind working to see if there are any, things you might need to fine tune and whatever. I hope this gave you some kind of direction in sight. Okay. And I really think that once that was to happen, they go to hit Israel and there's a miracle by God, that the whole world will see and understand that this is what God has done. And that if there's a time for a great revival to start, it would probably be right about then. Okay. Well, I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank everybody who came to join me, who got into the conversation, and that just had to listen in. All right. I'll talk to you soon. God bless you. And